on.
All right. Welcome to another episode of Paladin Strategies Podcast, Champions for a Cause. So, great conversation. We're looking excited to have today. Obviously, a lot of you guys know that our first not under branch, but our first leg of Paladin Strategies is the Ladies Shock Squad. And so, all things women's athletics at Wichita State University. And so today we have a guest that I'll let Brad talk about that I think is going to be exciting and be able to provide some good insight on his experience with Shocker women's athletics.
Yeah. And so what people don't realize is that Brad and Chad got our start as radio announcers or announcing basketball games, announcing volleyball, actually, I think was the first thing that we did. Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited that the thing we're going to do here today is talk with someone who that's his job is to talk about women's basketball at WSU, talk about women's softball, has done it for 9 years. Yeah. And so without further ado, we're going to go ahead and bring him up.
What's going on,
Mr. Steve Strain? Yes.
Strain here. What's going on, Steve?
Hello, gentlemen. Just here in Houston, waiting for Shocker Women's Hoops tonight. They'll take on Houston to wrap up the regular season, and hopefully we can finish with a bang heading into the postseason with some momentum.
Yeah,
nice. Now,
postseason starts.
Postseason starts Monday, the 6th for women's basketball, right?
Yeah,
that's correct. Yeah.
So, do you travel to all of the away games?
With basketball, I do. Yeah,
this
is every game obligation that I don't mind at all. And the nice thing is, I enjoy the travel no matter what. But moving to the American, I mean, we go to Orlando, we go to Tampa, we go to Memphis, Houston, Dallas, New Orleans. It's a terribly tough, terrible conference, if you know what I mean.
Did you get to make wasn't there a California trip too this year or no?
We did. We played 2 games out in Los Angeles the week of Thanksgiving, and it's nice because the downside is sometimes you're gone on weekends, you're gone on some holidays, and we were on Thanksgiving. But at the same time, we also left, I don't remember what it was, but I think it was 30 or 40 degree weather to go to 70 and 75 degree weather for almost a full week out in LA. The week.
Yeah.
And,
nice.
I try when we have more time like that. I took in a UCLA basketball game at Pauley Pavilion.
Ooh.
A lot of history there, and that be a Final Four. I really enjoy that aspect of it. You don't always get a lot of time to do things. A lot of these trips are you're there one day and gone the next.
Yeah.
But those where we're gone several days, I try to take advantage and get out and do some things.
Yeah.
Awesome. Amazing. And New Orleans, man, that's my town. I'm not from there or anything, but I've been there about 4 times, and I wouldn't want to live there. But going there to eat, oh man.
I was going to say New Orleans is kind of like Vegas. It's great to visit for a short while, but no place you probably can stay for a real long time. But love going there. Love going there.
Oh yeah, nice. Great, amazing.
So tell everybody a little bit about yourself. Tell them kind of your background and how you got into the voice of women's basketball and softball at Wichita State.
Well, I've been doing play-by-play since the 90s, since I first broke into broadcasting. I started off my full-time career was in television news as a sports anchor at news stations. And somewhere along the early 2000s, I was like, I keep listening to these ball games on the radio to get the score for my sportscast, thinking that's really where I want to be is at that game, calling that game. And so I started making a big push in the mid 2000s to transition into that. And my first regular job was at Abilene Christian University, which at the time was 2. But that's where I started my TV career. So I had some connections there, and they needed a play-by-play guy. And I did that for 2 seasons. I did football, baseball, men's and women's basketball because they played double headers at the D2 level. I did softball. I did that for 2 years, and then an opportunity at Texas Tech opened up, and I did that for 4.
Okay.
From 2009 2013. The challenge, guys, is, when you do this, a lot of times, not always, but in most cases, you're just paid by the game. It's a contract labor job. You've got to have a full job, but you've got to have flexible enough to allow you to travel and still do this. And sometimes that's a hard.
Yeah.
May have lost him. Here we
That's
go.
us. Yep, that's us with the flow right there.
My video. Okay, that was a phone call, but I got rid of it because you guys are much more important.
No,
there you go. I like that. I like that.
Yeah, no, you're 100% like it, and this is remotely not even on the same level, but Brad and I have been local celebrities at times, announcing local games. So my twins actually go to Wichita State right now, and when they were in high school, and then Brad's got a couple older kids and one that's a senior this year, and so we have a great media center in our community that is a nonprofit that our school contracts to do all of their, and our high school games will have a 5-camera setup at times at our home games. But Brad and I would announce some of those, and even just us with our full-time jobs, and we're trying to get away to see our kids. Like, there's a lot of times where,
and we're only going like 45 minutes.
Yeah, maybe an hour and a half, but
we're not leaving the state.
There's times where one of us may have been late. One of us could make we could make the boys' game, not the girls' game. So that whole piece you're talking about is trying to go down the path of, this is really where I want to be. But at the same time, it's contract basis, per game, and having to have a job that's flexible has got to be difficult.
Yeah. That's kind of what I ran into in Lubbock. Is things just kind of went to where I was struggling to find. I've done insurance, commission sales, is most of what I've done to make it work, because then when you're self-employed, you have all the flexibility you need, but sometimes it's hard to make a living. And I ran into that in Lubbock. 2012 and 13, where I was like, this isn't working, and I hated it, but I kind of just had to step back. I hit the reset button, and then sat out for a year, tried to find myself full-time again, and spent a year in Dallas where I didn't do any broadcasting. But then I found out Wichita State was looking for somebody. It was 2000, the summer of, and I said, to heck with it. I miss it. I sat out 2013 and 14. I missed it. I'm going to go to Wichita. I was born in Coffeyville, Kansas, so that's my home state.
Okay.
I spent a time as a kid in Gardner, Olathe, Kansas. My dad was stationed at a Navy base there, so I've got some ties to Kansas. Lifelong Royals fan. I'm going to go to Wichita. I'm going to be the voice of women's basketball, and I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do full time after that, which is kind of a crazy thing to do, and it was.
Right. Yeah.
But I got my insurance license, transferred over to Kansas. I've sold some radio advertising. I'm doing both right now, insurance on the side, but then full time I'm with ESPN Wichita in sales. And here I am 9 seasons later, doing Shocker Women's Hoops, and I get to do some softball when I have an opportunity as well. In fact, I've just found out earlier today I'm going to be getting to do a bunch of games once basketball ends. So hopefully that'll be a while, but something to look forward to with softball once the season's over.
Yeah, good, awesome. Well, we're glad that you're at Wichita State. I know the fans enjoy. I know myself, I enjoy having the ability to flip over to radio when I'm traveling or not able to get in front of a TV. And obviously, being a little bit of a mid-major, not everything is on. ESPN Plus is amazing today.
Right. Right.
And we have, subscriptions to that, but being able to see the stuff that we can't always see is kind of nice and beneficial. So I appreciate what you do on the radio.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I do too. And so let's dive into your 9 years, and we'll just deal with the women's basketball side of stuff. What's some of your best memories from announcing these games with the ladies?
Yeah, just my very first year here was the 3rd straight conference championship that this program had won. I came here and they'd won 2 straight, and so I fell into something really, really nice, because they had the most decorated player in program history in Alex Harden. My very first year here.
Oh wow!
I think she probably the greatest player in Wichita State women's history, and she's playing in the WNBA the next year. But there she was, and Jamila Bonner and Kelsey Jacobs, and that team was dominant. I mean, they were absolutely dominant. I think they lost one conference game during the regular season, maybe to Drake, and that might have been about it. Steamrolled through the conference championship. So that first year here to start off as a rookie and get that team was a lot of fun. It was really kind of cool because we were in St. Charles, Missouri. This is before the Valley switched over to going to Peoria. But we had just won the conference championship tournament, and they're announcing all of the players to go out to midcourt and get a little box. I didn't know what it was. I just thought, well, that's some sort of award for winning the conference tournament.
Right.
And I'm tearing my equipment down, and lo and behold, they call my name. And so it off guard. I'm not through tearing my equipment down, and I'm sitting far away from the bench on the other side of the floor. I got to run around the scores table and head out to midcourt, and they gave me a watch for my ring size.
Wow.
Because I got championship ring. All of that was a surprise to me. So that obviously was very, very memorable to have that. My very first year here. And, talking about trips and things like that, we went to the Virgin Islands that year.
Oh, wow.
So that was pretty cool. And we also played Ohio State, who had Kelsey Mitchell, who was a tremendous women's player, one of the most prolific scorers in women's history, Ohio State. We played against her team that season. So that Virgin Islands trip that season was also pretty memorable. And then just I think the relationships too. Jody Adams is still a friend of mine, but I only got to work with her for a couple of seasons. Keith has been here now for 6, and I think that's going to dovetail into the other part to answer your question about most memorable things is the relationships you build with people like that. She is as genuine, down to earth, good-hearted of a person as you'll ever want to meet. And some of the relationships I've enjoyed getting to meet Jim Littell, who coached her in high school and now assistant here on her staff. He and I, although we never met, I called basketball at Texas Tech while he was coaching at Oklahoma State. So we had some stories to share as well. But the relationships, the relationships you build with coaches, with players, with fans, it's all very special. In addition to some of the neat places you go.
Very cool. I think that's I think some cool things about the stuff you just said that just solidifies some things for me is when you get to that relationship piece is just especially on the female side. I feel like just in our time with the Ladies Shock Squad and we're not even remotely where we want to be in growing that thing, but the female athletes that we've dealt with, man, they're just super cool, down to earth people that are like, they're glad somebody's interested and that somebody's willing to support them. And they truly just care about people and they care about that relationship piece. And so that's the thing that we've noticed. And interestingly enough, so our board, actually, I think Jasmine was gone before you got there, but Jasmine Gordon was on the 2013 team that won the conference championship and had the first NCAA appearance, and then obviously that continued through when you got there a couple of years later and doing that. But then also Hannah Mortimer. Did you get to see Hannah play? She was there a little bit during your time, right?
I did get to see Hannah play. I know Hannah, and Jasmine was actually the graduate assistant my first year here after she graduated from. She was a GA coach, so she was with that 14, 15 team as a GA. So I actually got to know both of them. They're great ladies. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. They're both on our board. So helping us to figure out what to do here. So that's amazing. I didn't realize that, that she actually coached too. Jasmine actually coached too. I know she went on to coach with USA Basketball, for a couple years, was helping out. So that's really, that's amazing. So, so we have a 6-member advisory board, that's the athletes advisory board. And so we set that up because, we wanted, that perspective of the current athlete, because they live it every day. And we don't want to do things and then be like, man, Brad, Chad,
Yeah.
we don't have time for that. Whatever it is. And so Ella Ancio is one of our 6 advisory board members. And so um, tell us a little bit about your interactions with her sometimes, and maybe if you can tell us a funny story about her, or if you can tell us something that maybe is a little embarrassing. We can go back and tease her a little bit, but what are your thoughts on Ella?
I love her, and I don't know yet if I have an embarrassing story.
Okay.
But
She's Yeah.
it jogs the. Let me jog the memory a little bit. The thing I like about her though is, and not that the other players are distant at all, because they're not. They are, as you said, very engaging, very easy to talk to and get along with. But she's usually like on the bus, or if I show up at a game, I'll be setting up my equipment at a home game. Here's one for you.
Yeah.
She'll come over and give me a little,
Yeah.
and I appreciate that. And nobody else has ever done that. And I think that's just her way of acknowledging you're there, and she appreciates what you do. And I like that about Ella. So I appreciate that. Or when I get on the bus, other players might say, "Hey," but she's usually the first one that says, "Hi, Steve." Just she's very outgoing like that. And I've
Yes.
gotten to see why this happens, because I've gotten to know her parents a little bit,
Yeah.
because they're at games.
Yep.
And she members as we travel. We played in New Orleans, and she had people there that were kind of distant relatives, but I think that whole Ancio bunch is just kind of a close knit family in general. That
Yeah.
they weren't people that she had seen a lot in her life, but they came to New Orleans to see us play at Tulane.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
we've had people like that. So she's brought up the right way.
Yeah.
Good family, supportive family. Obviously, we know about Will going to Kansas State.
Yeah.
So I really personality and who she is and what she's about.
Yeah, you mentioned part of it. I know it's because she knows who we are, but we actually, so part of our deal with the Lady Shock Squad is we still want to kind of support the institution, but the girls as much as we can. And so we have season tickets to women's basketball and softball, and we can't make all of the games by any means.
Right.
We'd love to, but we can't yet. But we would actually sit, like sometimes my family would come with me, or I'd have my boys would show up and sit with us, or some of them, and we would actually sit, a couple rows behind Ella's family, and watching her little sister out there, on the court, being one of the ball girls and mopping the floor, and excited doing that. But every time after the game, when they go around and they, shake everybody's hands in the arena, and you can go down front, Ella's always very cognizant that she looks up as she gets to the area where her parents are. She always looks up when we're there and makes sure to make eye contact and make sure to wave at us and give us a thumbs up. And I always thought, man, that's like, when we started down this path, we kind of thought, man, we can maybe help some of these female athletes, and it's going to benefit them, and this will be fun to do. But I don't think we ever really thought about, that they would actually, I don't want to say appreciate, that's not the right word, but just that connection would kind of be there, where when they see you, they're like, "Hey, what's going on? How are you? Great to see you here."
You almost thought it was going to be more of this like business thing where, hey, these guys are helping us out, and we knew there'd be an appreciation there, but that it would be very like, we're here, you're there type of thing. And I mean, there are times where I have seen something about a game where I will just text one of the girls and just say, "Hey, saw this. That's awesome." Da 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 da. And they'll text back and like, "Oh, I'm so glad that you saw that." Yeah, and sometimes, man, I've had 5 or 6 texts back and forth in a span of 4 or 5 minutes where they're just like, and they want to tell me more about what's going on, type of thing. And you're like, wow, I didn't necessarily see that piece, like you said, that there was going to be the relationship.
Surprising,
Yeah. And they're just very thankful. So
they are, and I think that they are great kids, and Ella probably goes further out of her way than most, but all of them as a whole are great. They're fantastic, and they do get it.
Good.
They embrace the fans, and they all enjoy that high five line. But Ella maybe does it a little bit more. Got so many local fans in the stands.
She does.
But I think that's really probably a reflection, in my opinion, of Coach Adams and her staff and the kind of kids that they purposely recruit in the first place.
Yeah.
They want good kids. They want good citizens. They want good students. And if you look at their grade point average and all of the student athletes in women's basketball that make the athletic director's honor roll and the conference academic awards, she's got a bunch of them every year. So they're good people. They're good students. They get it and they're outgoing. And I think Coach Adams and her staff really do a good job of finding these kids that aren't just good basketball players, but they're good people. So I think it's kind of a reflection of the culture that the coaches have and the kids they try to go out and find.
That's awesome.
It actually is interesting, not an interesting, but I always enjoy talking about it when we're discussing LA is, so one of the things that we have done, and we haven't done a great job of it because it's time consuming and we're not where we want to be just yet with everything, but we actually have we actually have some shirts made. So we were able to get just some basic one made for the original 6 athletes.
Right.
And then we have a couple others we're working on putting up there. But so Ella has some shirts and hers, on the front, they obviously say Ella knows, and then on the back side, it's got 4 things with check marks, and one of them it says, on the front, Ella knows post moves, Ella knows rebounding, Ella knows blocks, and then Ella knows Christ, and it's got 2 check marks and has a verse on there. But so we got all this stuff up and kind of launched it, and it was not surprising, but the first shirts that we sold actually was actually Ella and one of our tennis athletes, Claire Whitaker, who also was from Cape and Mount Carmel. And the first ones we sold was an Ella one and a Claire one, and it was to one of the priests
from Mount Carmel
at the school that watched them. And so and then so there was another priest from California that had been there and knew a brother or something, and so it was just when we were setting up shirts, like there was no thought that the support base was going to be the priest that was going to buy a shirt. And that's exactly what happened. And I think it just goes to show not just the support and the way they were raised from their parents and their family, but the other people within their community growing up that they that they were around, just good kids all around.
And that's go ahead.
I think she aspires to go into sports medicine. I was actually sitting next to her at the airport, and she was looking at some sort of knee or something like that in a class she was taking, and talking about that with another one of her teammates. But I think she actually would have a bright future in sales because of her personality.
She's got a great personality.
She could probably be very successful in sales, and I'm sure she'll do great things for you guys because she just does have one of those personalities that you kind of attract to. I did think of a funny story. It's not really an embarrassing story necessarily.
That's all right.
But we were sitting at the hotel in Cincinnati, and it just kind of gives a perspective of where her heart is and her openness to me, like I told you about earlier. But we're sitting having breakfast at the hotel in Cincinnati, and I'm at the table next to her. She goes, "Steve," and she says, "We're playing in East Carolina on Super Bowl Sunday. I can't believe it." I said, "Well, I know, Ella. I've been stewing over that since the schedule came out in late September. I know. Why does the league hate us? What's going on here?" She says, I can't believe it. We're going to be on an airplane when the game starts." And I think from her perspective also probably wouldn't have been as big of a deal had the Chiefs not been in it. And then all of a sudden realization. So she and I spent a good part of the time the next few days trying to figure out what we were going to do to be able to watch the Super Bowl. I said, "Well, what's your family do?" She said, "Well, my family's having a Super Bowl party and we're going to be traveling." And I said, "Tell them to set the DVR and we'll get there at about 8:00. So anyway, we had a good-natured few days and maybe some Twitter messages back and forth trying to figure out how we were going to make all that work. As it turned out, I walked in where I was going to watch the game at right as the second half kickoff was taking place, which really was perfect timing if you're hoping for a Chiefs, because that's when the game turned. But anyway, we had a fun little and I bring that up because that's not like a conversation I've had with many, if any, other student athletes ever. But she's got that personality where she can share things like that with me, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
amazing.
Well, talk a little bit. One of the things we want to get into a little bit is, obviously you've been around now for 9 years, and 9 of those have been basketball. How many years have you done some softball?
I pretty much have done some softball every year except the COVID year, which would have been the 20 season, which
Yeah,
ended up getting,
yeah.
and maybe I 21, or if I did, it was very, very limited in 21 also. So I
Okay.
would say seven seasons where I was a regular softball announcer.
So what have what has it been like, and what have you seen during that time in regards to the support of women's athletics? Have you seen it kind of stay where it's always been? Do you feel like you've seen, and not just the support from the institution? Obviously, there was the news of the softball stadium upgrade, $17 million. I think that's amazing right
Oh
there.
yeah.
But not just in the sense of the institution and maybe the support and how it's changed or not changed from the institution, but also just from the community, the fan base, just globally. Have you seen a big difference at Wichita State and all of that, or has it kind of still been what you've seen in the whole 9 years?
I've seen definitely some growth. I've seen, with some of the things you talked about that have happened with softball and the facilities as that program continues to get better and better. Probably not happening as quickly as we all would like, but it is happening. So that's a good thing, and obviously success is going to play a part into that. And with the tremendous success that Coach Brett Benner has had,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
that's only going to, and I talked about the type of kid that Coach Adams recruits and the culture that she's created with these good kids. Same thing can be said about Coach Brett Benner, and
Yeah.
that's why you root for a great woman, a great woman who cares about her kids, and she does a tremendous job, and obviously has had a lot of success, and looks like she will again this year and probably for a lot longer at
Yeah.
Wichita State. But it's not happening as quickly as we would like, but I don't think we can say that it's still the same or it's going in the wrong direction. It things are moving in the right way. We just all probably would like to see it happen a little bit faster, but getting there. It's getting there.
Good. Good.
Yeah.
And with the Lady Shock Squad, I don't know the exact numbers, but if softball's not our most athletes that we have in Lady Shock Squad, it's second, and second would or first might be track and field. So between those two sports, but those softball players are a blast to talk to, man. They are just, Sid McKinney is unreal to talk with and to deal with. We've I've been there when Chad's handed her some stuff that we had gotten for her that was payment for some of the things she had done and whatnot, and she's just meeting us in a parking lot, and then she'll sit and talk to us for like a half an hour, and we're because we're getting ready to go have a business meeting or something, and we're just sitting there talking with her. Addie Barnard, just so easy to talk to and whatnot. We were doing something with our company with Zoe Jones, and she sent me a message, and I had never really talked to her. I'd sent texts back and forth, and what she was asking me, I was like, man, it'd be a lot easier if I could just show you. I said, can we FaceTime? She's like, yeah, sure. Boom, FaceTime. And
Yeah.
5 seconds later, and she's sitting at a coffee shop, and I'm like, okay, let me see your computer screen. Okay, so here's what you do. Da 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 da. And it was to set up stuff, so that they could be paid for the things that they do. And just phenomenal girls, and so women, young women, and so to watch them be successful so far, and just this week they've cracked 3 different top 25
Yeah.
polls, one their 23rd, one their 24th, one their 25th. you know um I think they're going to be fun to watch this year, and I would think that will be a fun call for you, because they're going to hit homers. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness,
Oh,
and whatnot. So offensively, when you're doing the games, I mean, doesn't that make the game a little more fun? when they're hitting
Oh,
homers.
absolutely. Oh yeah,
There
it's a
you
lot of
go.
fun. I mean, the funny, uh, they're fundamentally sound in all areas. They can bunt, they can play small ball. They've had
Mhm.
some kids that were really accomplished base stealers. In fact, Addison Barnard's one of them. But
Yeah,
the
yeah,
home
yeah.
run always finds. And we do all like to see the home run, but they're so skilled in all facets of the game: base running, base stealing, fielding, and they
Mhm.
can hit for power. And so that's what we're normally going to talk about. But yeah, those things you said about those kids don't surprise me. I don't get as close to them as I do basketball because I don't travel with them.
Travel, right?
But knowing Crook and knowing the kind of person she is and the kind of kid she recruits, kind of like I said about Coach Adams, it doesn't surprise me at all that you say those things about those kids that you do who are so tremendous on the field yet so humble off of it. And I
Yeah,
think that's the reason that you guys probably get passion for doing what you do, is not just because you want to promote women's sports, but because these are teams and kids that you want to pull for based on who
Yeah.
they are and based on the coaches that guide them.
agreed.
Yeah,
Agreed.
absolutely. Yeah, that's 100% accurate right there. Because I mean, even my wife. My wife's, she's comes from an athletic family, and her uncle played pro ball in the '70s for the Minnesota Twins, and he's actually in the Oklahoma State Baseball Hall of Fame. And I grew up, athletic family playing all the time, and my wife played college volleyball, but my wife even today, I mean, she tracks women's athletics at Wichita State because of what we've done. Just because even she's met some of the girls and been
Mhm.
around them and sees how they, one of our twins, Brad's heard me say this on a
Yep.
ton of our podcasts, but one of my twins, Caden, he's a bullpen catcher for the softball team. Like, he saw the post that they needed it, and he had some college offers at smaller schools, and decided, no, I just want to go to school and I don't want to play college baseball. And so they had posted a deal looking for bullpen catchers, and he went and did it. And they're like, hey, you're doing great. We'd love to have you. And so, he traveled with the team last week, and
Yep.
he enjoys it. And the girls are great to him. The coaches are great to him. And so, it's been everything that you're saying
Yeah.
is the stuff that we see, and what we're trying to, the challenge for us and what we're trying to do with the Ladies Shock Squad is to really figure out how to get people to understand that about these girls, how to get people to understand the connection they have with the fans, to
Yep.
understand how much they care about people,
Yep.
so that then we can get more support for the girls. And that's the part that we're
Yep.
struggling with, because we feel like people are still kind of, you know um not afraid to approach the girls, or not afraid to be involved, but they just don't really, I think a lot of times you can view athletes, whether it's pro athletes or college athletes, you can have that view that, well, they're an athlete, and they think they're better than other people that aren't playing D1, for instance, and they'll sign an autograph or say hi, but they're really not going to give you the time of day. And the reality is, man,
Yeah, they're
these
not like that
female
at all.
athletes are complete opposite of that. Like,
Right.
Yeah.
so yeah,
Yeah.
that's the struggle we're having, is just how do we get people to trill. And that's part of our podcast. We've done some
Yep.
podcasts with some of the girls to show them. And I mean, it's my crazy story, and it's not a basketball or softball athlete. It's when we sit here and talk about different stories, or reaching out, or doing things like that. Mine is, my wife woke up one day and we had a snake in our bathroom,
Oh yeah.
and which is not a good thing in our house at all, because I don't even want to touch the thing.
Right. Right.
But I was able to text, like, that day we had this snake, and I texted Natalie Foster from the softball team,
Volleyball.
or volleyball team,
Yep.
excuse me, Natalie, who's an all league volleyball player.
Yeah.
And I texted Natalie, and I'm like, hey, we could use your help today because we had a snake in our house, because
Yeah.
Natalie has this big
What did she call it?
python or
Albino
something.
python.
It's like an albino
Named
python.
Cheesecake.
Yeah.
Named Cheesecake.
And that's
Are you kidding
her
me?
pet back home in Michigan.
Right.
She has a pet snake named Cheesecake. And
Yeah.
so what was funny is, I'm like, Natalie, I could have used you today because we had a snake in our house.
Yeah.
And Natalie's like, I wouldn't have been able to help you there because I'm afraid of wild snakes.
Wild snakes, not her own pet
I'm like,
python.
this boa climbs all over you. but you don't want to come get this 2-foot bull snake.
Right.
And so, I mean, it's just those things that you're just everything you're saying, man. This is just solidifying how just cool these athletes. Brad and I aren't young. Like I'm 45.
Right. I'm 49.
And all these girls are just like, I'll be walking somewhere, and Sid McKinney will see me and be like, "Hey, what's up? How are you guys?" And we'll have a 10-minute conversation every time.
Yep.
Every single time, because they're just good people.
Yep.
And that's what we're trying to promote and get people to understand is, man, these female athletes are just great people, and they need our support, and we can make that happen.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah.
Well, I commend you guys for doing that because I think you're on the right path, and you're right. As more people start to know the quality of kids that these people are, and students too, they do well in the classroom. Same thing, Red Bender's group. I think people will start to latch on more to them. So I just applaud what you guys are doing, and I think you're on the right path. And like I said earlier, I think in general, all of this is on the right path. Maybe just not happening as quickly as we'd like.
Yeah.
But hopefully, wins also have a way of helping with things like that. So hopefully we can get our women's basketball program playing at a level where they're winning as often as a softball team is, and maybe we can really get this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I grew up in Wichita. So Wichita's I've always told people that, and you see it right now with the men's basketball team, even. Wichita is, I call it a fair market crowd, right? Like if the team is winning, people are going to show up. They're not just going to the game necessarily to go. If they're winning, they're going to show up and support. And I think that's what we see a little bit. Even with volleyball years ago, I mean, back in the mid 2000s when they were winning the Missouri Valley, and Sarah Lundgren was a 2-time MVC player of the year. I mean, they would get 4,000 fans at, a volleyball match. So I think you're right. I mean, if we get things start going in the right direction, that's going to help out and be great with a number of those kind of things. So when you started down the path of wanting to do radio and go that piece, was your idea always like, hey, I want to do radio for female sports, or I'll do it for any sport? Or did you have hey, I started down the path of wanting to do it for the men's sports, but then did some of the female and really liked it? Or was there a direction, or how did you end up doing the women's side?
My really big objective, guys, was to get to the Division I level. That's really what I wanted to do. Because of some of the things I talked about earlier, about some of the travel and just getting to see a Division I sport, and it could be men's or women's, at the highest level possible. This is the highest level of college basketball there is, Division I. And so, I mean, a few years ago, we're playing UConn once or twice a year. We're seeing South Florida, who's a very good team. The very first year that Keitha was here, we beat South Florida, who was a nationally ranked team. So not only are you seeing other teams, but you're playing against them with a chance of beating them. And so even though, you might not have the kind of season that you hoped for, you're still seeing the game played, your courtside, at its highest level possible. It's the highest level of women's college basketball there is. That's kind of cool. I do have a dream. I don't know if that will ever be fulfilled or not, of being the voice of a Division I football team. I'm not at the school to do that. That's for sure, at least right now. And maybe that never will State, although it was talked about a while back. But that is still something that's dangling out there that I really would be to be able to be the voice of a Division I football team.
Some people might say it depends on your definition of football. Because if the stuff gets through with the stadium and they add women's soccer,
right,
and you announce it, that would still be,
there you go, football. D1 football,
not the football you're looking for.
Fair point.
That's funny.
Yeah, no, I think that'd be cool, man. I think that
would be. I think Wichita State would pack the house for if they had a D1 football team. I mean, it's the game in town. That's what I love about Wichita State. Actually, is Wichita. You don't necessarily think that?
No, I don't disagree with that. I just think that, the challenge, and I think why it's never happened. So when I was a kid, I
Well, it's
can remember
expensive sport.
so I was born in 78. So when I was 5 and 6, I remember going to a couple of Wichita State games before they closed in like 85. But and there were some decent crowds, but I think it's cost so much. I
It
mean,
does.
and the sponsorships that you have to have. And I'm not knocking Wichita at all. I mean, Wichita State has great sponsorships coming in, and Shocker Sports Property does a great job with that. But I think it's like a whole nother level when you get to football, and I think that's the problem is I think people want it, and I think people would go watch it. But gosh, man, the amount of money to do it and do it right and to be able to compete. And so that kind of leads us into our next question really is, what's your thoughts on NIL?
Well, it's definitely been a game changer, and as you talk to coaches, in the profession, that they talk about how it's a different world out there now, and it's essential though. I mean, if you want to have, it's kind of like professional sports now. If you want a winning product in your community or your school, in this case Wichita State, you know, it's the reality. People have got to pony up money. You hate to say it like that and be so blunt. It's so different to say that about college athletics, but
Right.
that's kind of where we are now, and you're seeing it where kids are going to different schools based on a lot of money that's been thrown their way, and like it or not, that's where we are, and so people want their program to be successful, are going to have to accept that's the way it is, and hopefully those with purse strings can do it, because it's where we are. It's definitely changed the landscape of everything, that and the transfer portal, which go hand in hand now. Kids are transferring because of NIL money dangled out there in other places. It's definitely a new world. One thing that I have heard people say is, now that it's out there, and it's out there to the extent that it is, it's going to be hard to reel some of it back in, because I think some people are saying it's gotten carried away with how much money and everything that's going on.
Sure.
But hard to reel a lot of that back in now. So it's for the foreseeable future, it's going to be this way, and may not ever change. And it's definitely changed the landscape of college athletics.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we talked about yesterday in a podcast we had, that's probably the most intriguing thing that hit us that people didn't realize is when you're talking about it, we hear all the big stories, right? We hear about the guy that was going to be the QB at Florida and was going to get 13 millions and decided not to because the $13 million deal fell through, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, we hear all of those big ones and know all of those, but the reality is that the everyday college athlete, like, we're talking a few $100s, is what most of them are getting or can get, and even that few $100s they're appreciative of. And so we the other side, and what we're seeing in our world of NIL, and I've talked a lot about, is the men. If you're a really good athlete and they want you for football, that collective or those boosters are going to get you a good NIL deal, just because before you ever play a down in college football, you're going to get something. On the women's side, we don't see near as much of that, and so you've got, like, the women are, some of them, like, they really are having to kind of bust their butt a little bit to get. Sid McKinney's a
They got to
example.
Hustle. They got to hustle.
Sid's hustling all the time with different companies to do deals with, just so she can, have enough money, over the course, just so she can make 10 grand over the course of a year. And people like us think, like, man, but this is Sid McKinney, right? Like, you led the NCAA in batting average. You played for Team USA. Like, you're going to go pro in softball after this year. Like, what do you mean? Like, you're busting hump just to make 10 grand in NIL. Like, you should be having money thrown at you, and that's not the case with it. And that's something I think that a lot of people, don't see or don't understand. It's a huge game changer when you're talking football and men's basketball and even some of women's basketball. But, outside of that, there's not as much money flowing as people think sometimes.
Right.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate, because I mean, while softball maybe doesn't get the notoriety of say men's basketball, what about some of the sports that get less notoriety than softball does?
Yeah.
That has equally as talented of a kid, maybe who's running track and field or swimming or lacrosse or wherever, maybe every bit as talented as Sid McKinney that's getting nothing.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they're out there as well. And then
right.
you see the football getting millions and millions of dollars. And that's where something had to be done. I think a lot of people agree that these student athletes, for the commitment that they make, for the revenue that they help generate, something had to be done. And this was something. Maybe they've gone a little too far. Maybe they could have spread the wealth out a little more evenly amongst the different sports and athletes. But this is what we're left with, and we'll just see if the NCAA ever tries to rein in some of it. Because right now, man, it's the wild west between that and the portal.
So two things, and then we'll jump into our last piece and let you go because we know you've taken a lot of time. But Brad and I can talk about this stuff all day.
Oh yeah, all day long.
But two things. One, the NCAA did just come out with their first kind of action against NIL, and that was the Cavender twins out of Miami. But when they did that, what they basically said is, look, we're not going to punish the athletes for it. So basically, the Cavender twins and their parents went to dinner at Miami's biggest boosters, house before they actually signed to
transferred
go
to Miami. Yeah.
And then they ended up transferring there. And so the NCAA, obviously they didn't do anything to the athletes. The institution, the NCAA can't do anything to the booster. The institution would have to. Well, it's like they said on one of our deals, they're not going to bite the hand that's feeding them. I mean, they've got the booster given millions and millions of dollars. They're not going to do anything. So what it really amounted to was that there wasn't really any punishment.
Right.
And that's, and the other story that I was going to share that I thought was kind of sad when we heard it actually was the Florida deal with the quarterback that, ended up backing out because the $13 million, and who knows how true that was. It may not have been 13, but because that fell through. Well, shortly after that, the entire was it the women's basketball or softball? I think it was women's basketball.
Yeah.
The entire women's basketball team got a team deal, and it wasn't a big deal. It was like, I think they said it was like $1,000 a player. So like $15,000 deal for the entire women's basketball team from the Gator Collective.
Yeah.
And the number of people when that hit that were basically like blasting that deal of, well, if we couldn't come up with the 13 million for this quarterback, then why are we spending 15,000 over here? And like this 15,000 just helped out 15 female athletes,
right?
With something, and people were just upset because they couldn't get the $13 million deal done with one athlete, so they shouldn't be doing this one because they need to save the money.
Right. I'm telling you.
And kids who are already wearing the jersey and representing the school.
Yeah.
Yep.
As a player who had played one down.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I think that might be just the world of high-end D1 football, though. I mean, I think I think those fans are nuts.
Well, it's everything it's
and,
everything we see though with the female side, and it's what Brad and I talk about, and we get heated about with some people like, why do you guys not? You said it earlier talking about Ella and what she wants to do after school. Addie Barnard is the only player in NCAA history to hit over 30 home runs and still over 25 bases.
Yeah.
The only player ever to do that in NCAA history, and wants to be an anesthesiologist.
Yeah.
Wants to do and people are just like, we get heated about that. But anyways, Brad's got our final piece man here, and he'll get into that, but we could talk all day, and we appreciate you.
Yeah.
Appreciate you listening to us.
And we really do get fired up about the lack of respect for women sometimes, the female athletes and what they do, like their version of stuff or their brand is less difficult to do, like their practices are somehow less, and it's just an inferior product. And it's like, dude, this softball team's legit. Like, you need to go watch them play and stuff like that. And so before I get into my last segment, so from sportscaster to sportscaster here, broadcaster to broadcaster type thing, I've heard the thing, and then I kind of coined it, and I put it on social media every now and then. And when Addie hits home runs and stuff, I call them the Barnard bombs. Is that something that was already been in place for a while, or can I take any credit? Can you use it and say, just like my good friends at Lady Shock Squad say, there's another Barnard bomb, or something? I mean, can we? What are we thinking here?
I think we got copyright on that. Actually, that's a new one. I like it. I
Yeah,
like it.
I've
Hear that?
hashtagged it before. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
hashtagged it.
I'll,
Barnard bombs.
I'll tell you funny stories. Last year at a softball game, there's one half inning when the Shockers are batting. That's maybe like the fourth inning or something like that. They bring a little kid who wins a drawing in from the stands to be the PA announcer.
Okay.
And so the market is in the booth going over the names and everything, making sure they understand the pronunciation. And Addie got up to bat, and this little kid, probably about 8 years old or so, says, "Now batting, Addison Barnyard."
Yep.
The whole press box just erupted in laughter.
Yeah,
and that kid had no idea the cutest thing. It was funny, but no, I like that. I like that Barnard
bombs. And
what I think makes the Barnyard even more comical to me is the fact that little kid may not have even known that Addie's from Nebraska, and that's she's been in that world. Like,
she is. Right. She talked about having to do chores and all this stuff when we talked with her. She's a really, I mean, I could say it about every one of the Lady Shock Squad athletes that we do. I mean, she's impressive to talk to.
What would you guys say? What would you say? Because you're gonna have to, like, you could do that one, Barnard bomb.
Yeah.
But you gotta, right now, you gotta come up with something for Zoe Jones.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking like another Jones Jackin, or I don't know, because you call a home run
Zoe. There's another one. I don't know.
You got to come up with something for that.
Yeah, because she's hitting bombs all the time.
Is there a
for sure.
So as a broadcaster, this total
go for it.
Total sidebar.
Yeah.
Is there like a limit to the number of catchphrases that you can have, and how much, like, Dickie V had, he's a PTPer, baby, that's awesome, with the capital A, and that was, is there a limit to the number that you can have, and what are maybe your one or two favorite that you like to use?
I think that if it's authentic, it helps. The thing that bothers me the most is when they're scripted.
Oh yeah.
So no, I don't know that there's necessarily a limit, especially when you've reached the status of Dickie V. But I heard, I'll tell you two stories. I heard the other day, this got retweeted. There was an incredible finish to a Maine high school basketball.
I watched that.
Did you see that?
Yes.
And 2 times the announcer, who was probably a young kid or student or something, I'll give them a pass. But 2 times in that highlight series, he used the phrase, "Oh, doctor." Now, doctor was coined by, I forget who it was, but it was a longtime legendary basketball announcer.
Yeah.
And when you're copying somebody else's stuff, I'm not a fan of that.
Right.
And then when Joe Musgrove threw a no-hitter for the Padres against the Rangers, the announcer, who I'm not going to name, you can probably find it online. Joe Musgrove likes coffee. His nickname is Java Joe.
Yeah.
And so no-hitter was completed. He said, "Java Joe, no." And I just felt cringy, like that's been sitting in his notes since the 7th inning.
Oh, yeah.
It just wasn't spontaneous.
Right.
That's when it kind of gets under my skin. Dickie V, no. Love him. Bill Walton, authentic. But when it's scripted, or when you're taking a page out of somebody else's book, that's where I start to get a little cringy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what we should have done. We should have thought up some different announcers and been like, okay, one word answer, Dickie V. What do you got?
Oh, yeah.
Awesome, Like Gus Johnson. You ever listen to him? He does a lot of, so I'm a Big Ten guy.
Oh yeah.
I'm a Big Ten guy. And he used to be on the Big Ten Network. And I used to watch games just like, I am so jacked right now
Yeah.
about what's going on because his calls were just insane, you know? So
Yeah.
he's probably my favorite. But I will say this, you can use Barner Bomb, you can take it. You know, I'm not going to feel bad. Just maybe every now and then throw in the Lady Shock Squad. And
Okay.
so that's funny. So, well, I'll tell you what we do. We like to finish our shows, our segments with a little thing we call 5 questions. And so I'm just going to ask you questions and you tell us, and they're fun, you know, nothing's going to get you in trouble, I don't think. And just have fun with it. So here's the first question. If you had to
Okay.
delete every app on your phone, but you got to keep 3, so you get to keep 3 apps on your phone, what 3 are you going to keep?
Now, does that include like the mail and the regular stuff that you have to
No,
follow?
you
Are
can
you
keep
talking?
your regular one. So anything extra above and
Okay.
beyond.
With
So like
me and my
Twitter's in there. Yeah, go ahead.
Twitter is obviously in there, although I go back and forth deleting it, and Facebook sometimes, depending on how heated I get on things outside of sports.
Right, I got you.
Which ones am I keeping?
Yeah.
Well, I would have to say my fantasy sports apps will stay, like FanDuel. So
Mm-hmm.
keeping it. Um, I'm going to say iTunes because
Okay.
of the
Yeah.
travel. I like to
Yeah.
on the
Yep. Yep.
on that and Facebook. I'll go back and forth with Twitter, but Facebook's hard to. I mean, Facebook. I mean, to do business anymore, sometimes you got to have a Facebook
I'm
account.
telling you.
Businesses, website, Facebook page, and the times I've tried to take a break from Facebook, I find myself when I need to do business with somebody. That's how you find out their phone number anymore.
Right.
Their only web presence is Facebook. So
Yep.
you almost have it. Got it. You've almost got to have it. But those would
Yeah.
probably be 3 I can't do without. I was going to say my ESPN app, but I can still go to ESPN on the web, although I do
Yeah.
watch a lot of content. But
Sure.
I think
Sure.
the way.
That's amazing. Okay, so here's the next one. Which band or artist, dead or alive, would play at your funeral?
It would have to be from the 80s, because
Nice.
every time I hear his music, I just
Agreed.
it brings me back to some really good times as a teenager growing up in Texas.
There you go.
But of one, gosh, I heard a song the other day that actually made me think of that.
Okay. Of dying?
Let me come back. Huh?
Of dying? Made you think of
I used
dying?
Part of my insurance work has been in the funeral business. I
Oh,
actually
that's
have
true.
helped people pre-plan funeral arrangements, and so
Oh,
I
wow.
actually have asked about theirs because it was my job, which also got me to thinking about my own. Yeah.
I gotcha. Yeah. Wow. Wow. Okay. Well, we'll come back to you. Still think about that just a smidge. So, what's your favorite thing you've bought this year so far? In almost 2 months, what's your favorite thing you've bought this year?
I bought something cool. What was it? um, oh, I don't know if this is it or not, but I'm really excited about it. Just the other day, I bought play to Phoenix and the Royals tickets. Royals at Diamondbacks at the end of April.
Oh,
That's probably
nice.
That's
what it
very that is very
was.
cool.
Phoenix. I'm a huge fan of the city of Phoenix. I want to live there. I want to retire there. I'm actually a football Cardinals fan because I
Okay.
lived in St. Louis when I was a kid, and I've stayed a
Yeah.
Cardinals football fan forever. But I'm a Royals fan first and foremost.
Yeah.
So the other day, I was looking at some stuff I might be able to do, and the Royals are in Arizona the end of April.
Yeah.
Boom! I went out, bought some tickets for airline, and bought tickets to the game, and I'm
Nice.
excited about it.
Nice.
Okay, so there's a chance not only will we share our great love for being broadcasters, but we might be neighbors someday because that's where I want to retire because that's where I went to college was in Phoenix and Arizona Christian University. And
Yeah.
so when the Diamondbacks started, that's when I was going to college, or they had been there for just a little bit, not very long. I know that. And it used to be Bank One Ballpark. when it first
Right.
opened, and my dad was a VP of Bank One in Illinois, and so I was like, "Oh, Bank One ballpark, that's awesome." And so we would go to games, and it's a phenomenal experience. They've got that retractable roof, which I don't know
Yeah.
if they even still have it because I heard they were having some issues with it. But there, my wife and I were sitting there in a game, and they were playing the Cardinals, so I'm a huge Cardinals fan. And this is when McGuire was hitting all his home runs that year, and so we're sitting there, and all of a sudden, my wife goes, "Man, it got a little darker in here," and we look up, and that thing is closed, and we didn't even hear it.
Yeah.
Didn't even hear
Nice.
that whole thing close. And so, but it's a cool place. The whole around the stadium is cool. I mean, there's just a bunch of stuff to do before you even walk in. And Phoenix is, whoever laid that town out was really smart. I mean, it is just a gigantic, just perfect grid. Like there's not hardly any roads that even do a little bit of this. Like it is a square. And it's phenomenal. So
I've always had, if you're where there are palm trees, you're probably in a good place.
right.
Yeah.
Right. Love it.
It's a pretty
Well,
simple theory, but I think it's
since we're talking about Phoenix connections,
Yeah. Look at this.
my Phoenix connection is assistant basketball coach at Grand Canyon University, Jamal Walker.
Oh yeah.
So Jamal,
okay.
we grew up playing baseball together in Wichita, and then he went on and played D1 college basketball and was an assistant at Illinois.
That's I'm a big Illinois fan. So
all right, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
yeah, no, you're good. So what's left, and there might be multiple things, but like what's your next thing you want to do on your bucket list?
In the last couple of years, I've accomplished two of them. One was Fenway, one was Wrigley. Those two things. In fact, I saw the Wrigley in 2021.
As a Cardinal fan, I'm not gonna lie. I just puked in my mouth a little. No,
I will tell you this as a my wife's a Cubs fan, and I would tell you that here's my Wrigley story. I've been to Wrigley once, and it's probably one of my favorite stadiums because
I'm sure
because it's old and because it's like, look, do you want a burger, dog, or a piece of pizza? And do you want a beer or a Coke? Like that's it. It's not, we went to the National Stadium and it was this gourmet food and all of this, and like Wrigley was straightforward. But my wife and I got us tickets for our anniversary and Father's Day and Mother's Day and this and that, and I bought them. They were row one between home plate and the on deck circle on the Cubs side. And I'm like, man, these are like real, and a couple $100 a piece. These are really good seats. And so we're driving there from St. Louis the day of the game, and it's raining the whole drive. And we park in a parking deal, take the bus to the stadium. Right after we get into the stadium, game's rained out. And so I'm like, well, dang it, let's go see where our seats were. And they were actually the fourth row, I think.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, what are we going to do? Because the rain out wasn't until for like 4 months later. And so I jumped online and I'm like, let me look. And the two tickets, we had seats 1 and 2. The seats 3 and 4 were available for the next night. So I'm like, great, let's grab them. So I grabbed those. And obviously we relisted the first one, but I grabbed those for the next night because we were still in town. And we go to the game. It's 50 degrees. We go to the game. We sit down, and this a little bit older couple sits down next to us, and we start chatting. And we're like, "Yeah, we actually had those seats yesterday, but it got rained out. And luckily, we were able to grab these ones." And the guy looks at us and he goes, "Well, this used to be the first row." He said, but a couple of years ago, just a few years ago, they wanted to bring the backstop up. So they did, and they added in 3 or 4 rows in front of it. So now you have A, B, C, D, and then row 1. He goes, but what you probably don't know is the seats that you guys are sitting in right now are Ernie Banks's personal seats. And I said, what?
Wow.
He's like, yeah, those were Ernie Banks' seats. So I'm like, how do you know these were Ernie Banks' seats? And he goes, because the seats we're sitting in have been in our daughter-in-law's family for 75 years.
Mm.
And so when this was row 1, Ernie Banks had seats 3 and 4. And so I watched my first Cubs game sitting in Ernie Banks' seats.
There you go.
Are you guys on a time front?
No, not a big one. A slight one, but not big.
Yeah. We have a meeting we got to get to at some point, but
That's just a meeting, right?
Yeah.
that reminded me of a fun story. When I was at Texas Tech, if there was a men's game going on prior to our game, I would like to go to it. So we played Oklahoma in Norman, 2013.
Boomer.
But that's right, Saturday night game. Well, the Saturday day game was Bedlam. It was Sooners and Oklahoma men. So I got a cab from the hotel, went to Lloyd Noble Center, and me and my broadcast partner sit down on the baseline. And we had our media credentials for the women's game, but most of the time, those people don't care. They'll let you in. You can sit where you want. They see your press. We just told them we were there for the women. We were just early, wanted to catch the men's game. So I'm sitting there on the baseline, and an usher comes up and taps me on the shoulder and says, "Sir, was that your seat? Can I see your ticket?" I said, "No, I'm just here for the women's game. We're here a little early." He says, "Well, it's really no big deal, but that's Toby Keith's seat."
Oh.
So your story reminds me of that.
Oh,
was funny. Toby Keith there?
He showed up later. He did after or else. And I think a lot of times those ushers really don't care, but those people pay so much money for it that they do a pretty good job protecting those seats that are closed down even when they're empty.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, I would normally say that the Masters and the Kentucky Derby are even on the hit list for next. But because I have a significant other and I love taking her to things, I think she would find the Masters is too stuffy, and she doesn't like to watch golf anyway. Whereas she might take the atmosphere around the Kentucky Derby and all of the shenanigans and what have you leading up to it. So I would say the Kentucky Derby would probably be next.
That's amazing. Yeah, awesome. both those sporting events would be insane for sure. So before I go to the last one, because it's kind of our one we're known for, the last question. Any thoughts on the band or artist?
Yeah. What's the song that says, "I hope you had the time of your life"?
Oh yeah, I know the song.
The one from the movie Dirty Dancing, or a different one?
Yeah, no, different one. More recent.
Dirty Dancing is the one that says, "I had the time of my life."
No.
That one? Okay.
No, I know which one you're talking about.
You're thinking Green Day.
Yeah, Green Day.
You're thinking Green Day. Another turning point, a fork stuck in the road.
Yeah.
Time grabs you by the
wrist. Yeah,
that's Green Day.
Yeah.
Great funeral song.
Yeah, if we ever need to break out into karaoke, I call Chad. So that's good. And he's a huge Sooner fan, so he was excited about your last one. Nice. So here's the last one. So if we came up with a sandwich, or any company came up with a sandwich, the strain, the Steve strain, the brain strain, whatever we end up naming this sandwich, and I came up with brain strain because we actually did this hot nut challenge, and one of the hot nuts, the whatever was the 7-pot brain strain. So that's how I got that in my brain. So anyway, if we were to name a sandwich after you, what kind of bread, and then what kind of cheese, and what would be on it?
I'm gonna go like a Subway with American cheese, steak, and then maybe some banana peppers. Got to have banana peppers.
Like it. What kind of bread?
Subway sandwich, American bread.
Just a regular one. Yeah. Yep. I got you, man. Well, that's great. Like Chad said, we could talk about this stuff forever, and then and then the other thing is, I think it'd be great just to talk about broadcasting stuff, because like I said, I mean, we're not at your level by any means, but Chad and I mean, we've announced a lot of games, and
who does the softball games when you're not there?
Jamie Breadbenner, who is Christy's wife, actually was my color partner back when we were doing the Valley. Well, they've got a couple of kids now, so she does not have as much time to devote to that. But sometimes she'll fill in for me, or she'll be my broadcast partner when she's got a babysitter. And then there are a selection of other broadcasters, and especially this time of year when I'm still doing basketball, there might be some other guys this weekend and next that are doing some games. Any collection of guys, depending on availability, locally will step in and do it.
I don't think we have the credentials.
Not for that. I'm just thinking Connor, my other son that's a twin at Wichita State, he started announcing when he was in junior high.
Yeah.
And so yeah, he would, maybe one day I'll put him in touch with you, and
but wouldn't it be fun to do one
stuff.
game? Bring the Brad and Chad.
People would probably fire us
Right,
quick.
I know.
We would say something inappropriate.
You guys would be a blast. No, when my dad took me to Royals games, living in Gardner, Kansas in the late 70s, I remember it might be a school night, but I would always look for Denny Matthews and Fred White. I would try to find where they were, and there's usually sort of banner hanging down below their booth so I could spot him. And I was like, man, this is their job. I've got to go home probably in the 8th inning. They get to stay here till the end of the game. They get to sleep in tomorrow to be in school. Right. And then they get to turn around in tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Right.
And I got to go to school. That's the job that I want.
Right.
And even though I'm Royals games, I am in Houston. I'm on the road, and I get to do a game tonight, so it's good.
Yeah,
it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. Well,
you have to tell Ella when you see her today.
Yes.
That you say, "Hey, I spent an hour and a half with Chad and Brad, and they said to tell you hi." And
yeah, definitely tell her hi for us, for sure. So well, it's been great talking to you, Steve. And once again, this has been Steve Strain. He's the voice of the women's basketball and quite a few softball games, it looks like, this year for Wichita State University, and just a unique perspective on women's sports through his 9 years with the program or with the school, I should say. And we just really appreciate your time, and we'll probably have you on again sometime. Something crazy will happen at one of these games, and we might want to get your firsthand thoughts on what went down. But it's been great to talk to you. It's been great to get to know you, and wish you nothing but the best. Safe travels. Big Wichita State win tonight, hopefully, and go from there.
Hey man, it's been a blast. Ask me back anytime, and maybe we'll talk about the Shockers shocking the world in the women's conference tournament in Fort Worth next week.
That'd be amazing.
Wouldn't
that be amazing? Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Steve. And for the Lady Shock Squad, we're out.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.